Welcome to LA Zine Club every other Monday at 4 p.m., usually on Zoom. This is our first time on YouTube Live. Thank you for having us on the main feed of LA Public Library. We're so excited for Zine Club. I see some regulars in the YouTube Live chat. We've got Blanquis and John Dishwasher. Thank you for joining us again. Thank you. So we have a very special guest coming up right now. We've got Christine Wong Yap, guest zine maker. They is a visual artist and social practitioner working in community engagement, drawing, printmaking, publishing, and public art to explore psychological well-being, belonging, and resilience. She has developed participatory research and public art projects in partnership with Times Square Arts, the Wellcome Trust, For Freedoms, the Other and Belonging Institute at UC Berkeley, the Chinese Cultural Center of San Francisco, and the Library Foundation of Los Angeles, and many more. Thank you so much, Christine, for joining us. And take it away. We can't wait to see about all the studio and all the work you've done with zines all over the world. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And thank you for inviting me here and having me on. And thanks to all of y'all watching in YouTube land. All right. So I will go ahead and share my slides. All right. So that's my name, Christine Wong Yap. Nice to be here. I am based in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is the homeland of the Ohlone, Ramaytush, and Miwok. I am here to talk about zines, but I am just going to do a brief introduction of myself as an artist and then go into a comic book that I've made, as well as two projects that involve some zines, one of which, as Ziva mentioned, is at the LA Public Library and the Library Foundation of LA. And along the way, I'm also going to share some banners and a map that you see behind me, because I'm actually streaming from Berkeley Arts Center, where I have a solo show right now. All right. And I can see the comments in the chat, so feel free to ask any questions if you have any in the comments. So I am an artist, and as Eva mentioned, I work in all these different areas. If you're not familiar, social practice is very similar to community engagement in that I do a lot of workshops. But I think social practice is a little bit different because it's very invested in the process. And I think a lot about the ethics and the aesthetics of how I build relationships in my projects. And I also think a lot about how I tell the story of those relationships and of the process. And that's kind of why I like making zines now, is to help tell that story. I also have another category of printmaking and publications in here. And to me, it makes a lot of sense to lump those two together. And I will tell you why. So I majored in printmaking when I went to art school. And this is a terrible photo of a really old print that I made. It's a, I think, 7-color reduction woodcut print. It's 22 inches wide and 30 inches tall, just the paper. And it was printed on an etching press. And sorry, the photo is so bad. I went to undergrad so long ago, I shot my work on slides. So I have to it's a whole thing to get the good photos. But anyway, the reason I share this is just to talk a little bit about why I was interested in printmaking in the first place. So you guys probably are familiar with that image on the right. It's by the artist whose photo is on the left, Jose Guadalupe Posada. For me, he was one of my favorite artists in undergrad. And what I liked about his work was not just what he made, but how he made it and how he got it out into the world. So Posada made a lot of these broadsheets, and they were meant to be distributed widely, and they were also meant to be distributed to everyday people. And the point of the graphic is also to help convey the content for people who maybe did not have literacy that we have today widespread. So for me, I really like that printmaking has this democratic medium. And in a way, I would think Posada, if he was alive today, he would be a zinester as well. The idea of like signing and numbering your fine art editions into limited editions is a European idea. It was kind of like it's kind of an artificial scarcity thing. So for me, like even though sometimes I make prints that way, and I'm not saying that's like a bad way and don't do it. Sometimes I make prints that way, and sometimes I make other things like zines that I can share more widely. And it's about that dissemination and decentralization of art that I really like. So next I'm going to share a comic book that I developed. This was a few years ago with the Chinese Culture Center of San Francisco, which is a small nonprofit organization in Chinatown, which is the homeland of the Ramaytush. That's Chinatown in San Francisco, obviously. So the question that we wanted to ask and find out from the community is, how does arts and culture impact your sense of belonging in San Francisco Chinatown, which is also the home of the historic Manila town? And this was during the pandemic, so we conducted a lot of outreach through community-based organizations, and then they kind of had their constituents fill out this questionnaire. So you can see one of the questions are, what are your top 3 favorite arts and culture activities in Chinatown? And how does this activity enrich your life? So based on the responses from those questionnaires, I created this comic book. It's 56 pages long, and I also created a version that's fully available in Chinese. And I can only speak a little bit of Chinese, so it's really Chinese Culture Center who helped me with all the translation. So in the comic book, there's 3 different types of pages. The first kind of page is this thing. It's an illustrated map of places of belonging. You'll see these quotes. All of the quotes throughout the comic book are from actual people. They're residents or visitors who have some kind of important relationship to Chinatown or Manila town. And then here's another map. I did 3 different maps, one for each of the 3 main thoroughfares in Chinatown. And then the second type of page are these illustrated, these kind of multivocal street scenes where different people are kind of sharing what they like about kind of the culture that they find on the street. So that was one of the things that was interesting, is we asked people about arts and culture. And a couple of people talked about going to the gallery, but a lot of people talked about the kinds of culture you find on the street kind of randomly. And so it was really interesting to me that like the more I researched it, the more I realized like San Francisco Chinatown is kind of a role model of urbanism. It's actually the second densest neighborhood within the United States, second only to Manhattan. And compared to the rest of San Francisco, you know, it's more immigrants, lower income levels, all these different things. And because of all those factors, I realized like using pictures to help tell the story, similar to how Jose Guadalupe Posada did, for people who may not have the same kind of like literacy levels you would need to read a full book that's just all text. That's why like comic books makes a lot of sense. Okay. Here's another street scene. I really love this one because you get the sense of the kind of alleyways in Chinatown. And so Chinatown's, one of the other things about urbanism is like there isn't a lot of public space in Chinatown, but all the public spaces are very vibrant because of that. So when you walk down the alleyways, you might run into somebody playing music, or you might see somebody rehearsing their lion dance. And it's these kinds of things that give people a sense of like adventure or serendipity when they visit Chinatown and they run into these things that they aren't expecting. I'll just mention in terms of process, when I did this comic book, it was kind of this weird hybrid process where I used a lot of photo references because I really wanted it to look like Chinatown. Um, and I really wanted just like all the architectural elements and all the people to look like people or places from that neighborhood. So I used a lot of references, and then what I would do is kind of like Photoshop them together, and then I would print it out, and then I would put it on the light box, and then I would ink it with like a brush marker on a regular piece of paper. Then I'd put it back into my scanner, scan it, and then clean it up in Photoshop. Because I had a really cheap scanner, I would always have to clean like the same 5 pieces of dust that are on the inside of the scanner. And then it was just this whole process. It was a little bit convoluted. And in the past year or so, I've started working on an iPad, and it's really streamlined my process. And in a project that I'm working on now, I think you'll see why it's really important to be able to streamline things a little bit. All right, so the third type of pages that you can find in this comic book are these longer first-person narratives. And while the first two things are like just spreads, these narratives can be more pages to help tell the story. So it's usually one person's perspective, but it's often about many generations of their families and their relationship to Chinatown and Manila Town. So first, when I started out this project, I had really focused on Chinatown, but as I talked to more people and people kind of brought up the story of the historic Manila Town, especially around the fight to save the I Hotel, then I was like, oh yeah, I have to make sure to frame the project to be inclusive of this history. It was really striking to me how many people had this intergenerational relationship to Chinatown, and how younger generations really associate Chinatown with older generations and hang on to it as like a place, almost like a memory palace that you walk through, that like different sights or sounds, certain languages, certain buildings transport you in time. So when we launched the book, it was still like at the peak of the pandemic, and I had access to this space called 41 Ross. It's a storefront gallery, but we decided not to open it. We just decided to create a window display. So there's a little monitor in the window where people can see the pages of the zine. I'm sorry, the pages of the comic book in both English and Chinese. And then they can pick up two things. One is the comic book. So we actually gave away a lot, like hundreds of copies to community-based organizations, including like health clinics, so they can have them in their waiting rooms and stuff, or to the people who work there. And then I combined all the places on the different maps into one map so people could do a self-guided walking tour of Chinatown. And, Chinatowns were one of the first places that people stopped going to early in the pandemic because of anti-Chinese sentiment. So I felt like if there's anything that I could do to help people come back to Chinatown, that would be really good. And also, I am really proud of the fact that we really supported the local neighborhood vendors through this project. So the zines were printed at a copy shop, like one alleyway over from this alleyway. And then the vinyl was printed and installed by a sign shop that was like one block up on Stockton Street. And then we had a little soft launch. And then rather than us providing food, there's a boba shop right across the alleyway from this storefront. And so we just gave people drink tickets to the boba shop. All right. So I have also done this kind of artist in residency project and commission with the Library Foundation of LA. And that, of course, is on Tongva land. And so I actually worked with Todd LaRue from the Library Foundation, and he had invited me to come down to LA and to visit a bunch of different libraries and meet a bunch of different librarians. And we went all over LA and talked to people at specific libraries that Todd and some of the branch librarians had identified as having real interest in clubs or affinity groups where people feel a strong sense of belonging. And then after that, I did more follow-up interviews with people over the phone or in group settings, like on group Zoom. So this was a Zoom where I interviewed a bunch of volunteers who help out with the adult literacy program. They either are tutors or they teach classes. And then after that, I did some sketches. This is a page in my sketchbook where the left side would be the sketch for the front of the banner, which has the name of Adult Literacy Program. And then the back has a quote from one of the participants. In the Adult Literacy Program, it has 2 quotes because I realized, like, it's not just about a participant who comes to the workshops, it's really also about the volunteers. So then I created a digital design based on that sketch. So all in all, we focused on 7 clubs or affinity groups. Here's another sketch. This is for the Watts Willowbrook Conservatory, which is actually not a library program. It's like a separate program in the community that just happens to do their rehearsals at the library in Watts. So then here's all 7 designs. I did some of the lettering. There's one that I didn't do. That's the black one that says Neuroplasticity Club. The lettering is pretty different. And that's actually because one of the people in that club, who's a senior living in a residential facility, he is retired, of course, and he actually used to be a sign painter. So he actually drew that design, and then I digitized it. And you can see all those Post-it notes on the back. So this is a photo from my studio when I was working on this project. And you can see some of the banners have some elements that are digitally printed. Some of them are hand painted. All of them are sewn. So after I created the digital designs, I created patterns like the one you see on the table, or I also used a projector, which is also on the table. So, and then you can see on the wall, like that's one of the banners being painted by hand. And then, I sewed some of the banners, and I also needed help because it's 14 different designs when you have 2-sided banners. So we hired helpers. They were all union stitchers who work in the costume or wardrobe industries in San Francisco or LA. And then there was an exhibition called Something in Common, curated by Todd LaRue at the Central Library's Getty Gallery last year. So, like I mentioned, I'm currently at the Berkeley Art Center where I have a solo show, and one of the projects on view in the show are the banners. So I'm going to take you on a little tour of the gallery. I think we should pause the slideshow for a second. Not sure how to do that. What do I do? Oh, let's see. Keep. Remove from stream. Let's see what happens. Okay, here we are. So this is the gallery. I'm going to be a little bit awkward. Let me see. So this is the entryway to the gallery, and you can see the 7 banners. That top one is the final adult literacy banner, and there's that neuroplasticity banner and the Persian Poetry Forum of LA banner in the front. Let me back up so you can see it. I hope you can get a good view. So yeah, this is all hand sewn. Let me show you the Persian Poetry Forum. They're an awesome club based in LA, and I actually worked really closely with an LA Public Library librarian to develop the design. he talked a lot about how Persian culture is so many different cultures geographically and culturally, and how it was really important for them to be a space of neutrality where people didn't have to feel like all the divisions within Persia had to show up in the club. And so he actually advised me about how to, one, use the phoenix motif, which is an important part of Persian poetry. And then two, like all the patterns inside the wings represent different geographic areas of Persia. So it really symbolizes that kind of like unity and diversity that the club espouses. Let me show you the back of the banner. Okay, let's see. Okay, and then of course this one is bilingual. And I really like that quote that somebody said, "The club helps us be who we are." So to me, it's like these banners, like, what they say on them are an important part of the work, like, but also like the backstory behind it and like what people share with me is a really important part of it too. And I think that's where like the zines also really come in. This is just the back of the other banners. So awkward to like hold a laptop and do this camera walk. Oh, thank you. I'm glad you guys are loving them. The light is tricky to have things lit up back high. Okay, cool. All right, let me just see. Okay, so behind me is this map about different zine projects, including the LA project. And this one right here is this zine that I created for the LA Public Library project. So I can flip through it, but actually it's probably easier for me to share my screen again. Here we go. Thank you. All right. So as I mentioned, this is the cover of the zine. And inside the zine, I have more information like direct quotes and context about why like different clubs are places of belonging for people and what are different impacts on mental health, because that's one of the interests of the Wellcome collection as well as my own interests. So in addition to kind of like quotes and essays, there's these little activities where I invited people from the clubs, either facilitators or volunteers or participants, to come up with activities so other people can get a sense of what happens in the club. To me, this is part of the kind of like each one teach one model where everybody is an expert of their opinion and your skills are valuable and can be shared with other people. So this is kind of this idea of like taking a workout, but applying it to the ways the Adult Literacy Club invites learners to learn. I also worked with a teen council, and there's so many teen councils across different libraries in LA, and they all get to decide what themes they work on. So it's kind of tricky to find a way to kind of bring them all together. So we actually made like a board game, and then different teens from different clubs suggested different activities that fall in the squares. And then they suggested different little figurines we can make to make like things that you can cut out and like, you notch them together to have little figurines that go along the board game. So the sponsors who sponsored the project in LA are also part of this greater thing called Mindscapes, which is a cultural program that investigates mental health in 4 cities, New York City, Berlin, Tokyo, and Bangalore, which is also known as Bengaluru in India. Todd introduced me to them, And they asked me if I would be interested in doing a project with them. And I said, yeah, what about like a zine project? Um, is there anything that happens between the cities? Because they already had artists in residence, like one per city. But I was like, wouldn't it be cool to do something that connects the cities? And they said, okay, what did you have in mind? So I proposed this idea of doing an international zine exchange um, where different people in different cities would contribute ideas to one zine, and then everybody who participates in the workshop would get a copy of all the zines. Um, it would be about belonging and mental health, similar to the project in LA. Um, and I like the idea of it being multilingual and kind of being like a knowledge bank of different activities that people propose. So the first city I went to was New York City, and the New York Public Library there actually hosts this thing called Anti-Prom, which is a safe space for LGBTQIA plus teenagers to come and have a prom and be whoever they are. It's really cool. And I really love that it's such a strong space of belonging. And like teens totally get it. They don't have to, whatever. It's like, no questions. Just be who you are. So other cool thing is they work with a high school for fashion industries, which is like the most New York thing ever, that there's a high school where you can study to become a fashion designer. Um, but there's teens who make looks, who get to walk their looks in a runway during anti-prom. And I thought, wouldn't it be cool to make an activity for anti-prom related to fashion and fashion design? And I thought, what about paper dolls? Normally paper dolls, historically the ones that I've seen, have been like cis white women with no visible disabilities. And I thought, let's make dolls with different sized bodies. Let's make trans dolls. Let's make seated dolls. Um, and then let's have some of the teens at anti-prom get to do whatever they want with the dolls and dress them how they want. And then some of the fashions that are available in the templates include the fashions by the high school designers. So this is an example of one of the completed dolls during anti-prom. It is kind of cool that they had the art activity during prom because, as a teenager, there's lots of ways you want to interact or not interact, especially when you're coming into a space with teenagers from all over the city. So maybe you feel like dancing, or maybe you're like, let me go to the art zone and sit down for a little bit, which is probably what I would have done in high school. All right. So then I went to Berlin and I led a series of 3 workshops, also working with the library there, but then also the librarian on the far left, Dr. Leah, she connected me with some different organizations out in the community. This is at a community garden um, in Kreuzberg, which is next to Colony am Flughafen, which is an intentional community that's been operating since 1946. Flughafen, I think, means airport, and it's because it's located next to a park that used to be an airport. So Berlin is known for having a lot of parks. It actually has, I think, around 2,500 parks, more parks than any other city in Europe. And that actually has like a profound effect on the quality of living and that quality of the air there and just like the sense of openness, even though it's this major city. Um, so anyway, I led workshops all over, and we did a process of cartooning that's very similar to the process I mentioned to you in the beginning with the comic book, where people do a pencil sketch, and then I brought vellum and gel pens and brush markers with me in my suitcase, and then they learned how to use brush markers and ink their drawings. And so here's some of the designs. So these are all, just like I said, like activities. Like we thought about what is something that gives you a sense of belonging and how could you turn it into a how-to activity for somebody else to try. Then I went to Bangalore in India and I did some workshops. This is with a group of students who are artists and designers from 2 different universities. This was hosted by the Museum of Art and Photography. And then I also worked with an organization called Dream a Dream, which works with students from historically underserved neighborhoods in the outskirts of city and other places. And these are like 14 and 15-year-old students who, this is like their first time using a brush marker. Oh yeah, and then I found this photo and I was like, oh, this is such a good example of why I make zines. So, it's like why print things out when so much of life is like digital, but then having like an actual paper zine made such a difference when I visited these kids in India. Just like having something that wasn't mediated by this, you know, device was so nice. Okay, then I went to Japan, and rather than working in Tokyo, I actually partnered with a clinic in Karuizawa, which is kind of a mountain resort town. Um, and they are especially interested in just building relationships with community members because a lot of people go there to retire, and then they don't want to only meet people when people come in when they start to get sick. The clinic wants to build relationships with people so they can have conversations about what it means to have a quality, what kind of quality of life is important to them in their older years, and especially at the end of life. So in addition to exploring belonging, I also kind of ask questions like, imagine yourself in 10 years, what's the best possible life you can have? What would you be doing in your ideal possible life? And those are kind of ways to talk about like what is meaningful and valuable in your life without saying like without talking about end of life specifically. So these are cards to spark joy. So I had different prompts like, what can you do to be more spontaneous or open minded or to find humor in life? And they're very, very simple strategies. But I also think, as like a workaholic, these are also the things that I need are very simple strategies. Okay. So in total, I went to 4 cities. I did 11 workshops and I worked with 92 contributing participants. Not everybody who went to the workshop is contributing to the zine because sometimes I did workshops like this where I visited like a kindergarten in Japan and they just did the paper dolls with the designs from the high school students in New York. And then also I added more garments like the kimono that you see on the left. Okay, so there's 4 cities. Each city's content is going to be collected into one zine or one volume. And there's 3 different languages, English, German, and Japanese, because everybody in India speaks English for the most part. Even though a lot of the students, especially the younger ones, are more fluent in Canada, they're in that school to practice English. So they made their activities in English. So now I'm translating everything also into these 3 languages. So there's going to be a total of 12 scenes. And then each set will be a set of 4 zines in each different language. So I gathered 85 activities, and times 3 languages is I've been working on creating 255 versions. But I have helpers, so that's okay. So here's one of the examples. Like I mentioned, like this, some of the students in Bangalore are artists. So you can see they have just like a lot of panache in their designs. So this is kind of an activity to explore Bangalore. So there's all different places that they like to go in this kind of like illustrated map in a way. This is the version in German, and this is the version in Japanese. I don't speak Japanese or read Japanese, so I have a helper who helps me because it's really hard to spell things right when you can't read. um, and then this is all done in Procreate. I mean, the original drawing was drawn on vellum, and then I had somebody help me scan it and then clean it up, and then we import it into Procreate. So the lettering is just like a lot easier rather than, all the whatever. So it to me, like streamlining my process has helped a lot that way. Here's an example of one of the Spark Joy cards from Japan. And this is the original. This is the English version. And then this is the German version. Okay, here's like a nerdy zine thing, right? So a few years ago, I worked with somebody who connected me with a vendor who had this special kind of binding. So it's not perfect binding, and it is saddle stitch with just a staple down the spine, but then they have a special machine to make this square edge. So there's, it has like a spine, like a perfect bound book, but it's still like saddle stitched. So it's really cool, and I really like how it looks, especially when you have thicker zines. So the comic book was 56 pages. Some of the zines for this project are 72 pages. And it's just like when you fold that many pages, like the middle pages creep out, and then the outer pages, the cover doesn't really cover all the way. So then they fold it this way and then they trim it, and it just makes such a nice finished thing. So this is the cover of the zine, and I thought, why not try to help people differentiate between the different zines by having a spine with this kind of like pattern. So this is a zine for New York City, and the spine is kind of inspired by like New York City architecture that has like Art Nouveau, sorry, not Art Nouveau, Art Deco, like the Empire State Building. So it's kind of this like radiant thing. And then the Berlin one, of course, like thinking of the Berlin Wall and breaking down the bricks and stuff or whatever. So yeah. All right, so this was like the original vision. And this is kind of like a spread in one of the zines that kind of talks about the profile of all the people I worked with, because really, like, I cannot do this project alone. It really relied on a lot of community partners to connect me with the participants in the workshops and help with translation and interpretation in the workshops and all this. So really, it's everybody, so many people helped out. And then, of course, this in the gallery is an visualization that people who come to the gallery can see to learn more about the project. So here, all these little pockets, there's like the paper dolls that people can like do and cut out. Here's a bunch of like the different garments. So this is like a design from the student in New York City. Whoa. Some of these are like designs. So some of the art students in India also contributed garments. So this is like a traditional sari, and then some of them were made like cool like fashion and stuff. This is also from one of the students from Bangalore. And then also I have I created more like different kinds of hair with like different kinds of hair textures and stuff. There's one that's kind of like the Beyonce, or the Solange and stuff. So yeah, so all of these are available in the gallery for people to kind of like interact with. All right. Okay. So yeah. So okay. So I've got 2 zines done. I have the launch coming up on Saturday. This third zine is getting copy edited right now, and I'm going to try and work on the 4th zine tonight and get it printed by Saturday. I hope I can make it, and I hope you wish me luck. If you happen to be in Berkeley this Saturday, come by and see what happens. And if you want any more information, this is where you can find it. That's my talk.
Thank you so much. That's so cool. You were at all those cities and you're working in multiple languages and you have your big show this Saturday. So definitely good luck tonight working on your 4th scene.
Thank you.
And I'm curious when you were there, so everyone knew about like they're working on a zine. Did they know all about zines? How did you introduce them to zine, the concept in general? And
Um,
what's the word for zine in all the different languages?
that was definitely like a thing where I'd always stop to say it's like a self-published magazine, you know? So a lot of people hadn't heard of it, but then I think people get it, especially that's again like if you have a paper thing that you can pass around, it really helps.
I know New York Public Library has a zine collection, so at least for sure in New York, that's a big thing. But I'm sure everywhere. I mean, I've traveled around. I've seen zines in Mexico City when I go there, and that's what I love to look for zines all over the world. I know one of our zine club members is traveling right now, and they're going to try to bring a zine back in a different language for our zine collection.
Oh, awesome. Cool. Yeah,
And we
I'll be
definitely have your belonging zine. We have that
oh
right
yeah,
now in the zine collection.
cool. Awesome. And I think I also might have tried to get I gave some of the librarians at the LA Public Library the comic book as well, so it might be in circulation.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, but when these zines are done, I'll be sure to get you guys a copy, especially in thinking the different languages too, because you guys have so many different patrons of different languages.
Oh, we would love that. Yeah, I
Yeah,
have right now a bunch in Spanish and English, so I'd love to expand and get zines in all languages or a lot of different languages.
yeah,
And when you showed your belonging zine teen council and you showed the game, those are actually teens from my branch,
nice.
Pacific Palisades branch. So I recognize all those names from teen council. So I was excited to see Fiona and Sophie. So you probably work closely with them. And
Yeah, yeah, they're really great. They're so motivated and active.
thank you. And so have you been to those cities before?
No. I mean, New York I'd been to. I actually lived in New York for 10 years, but it was my first time in Berlin and Bengaluru, my first time in Japan.
Did you get time to explore outside of your workshops?
It was really tight. I had a lot going on, like other projects, so I didn't. But actually, like, I might go. I am. So the Welcome Collection and all the other artists in residence are doing their final like evaluation and reflection in Bengaluru. Um, and so I'm going back and I'm going to bring a bunch of zines to distribute to the workshop participants in Bengaluru. But then I did the count of all the zines I need to bring, and it's going to be like 90 zines. It's going to be like 70 pounds worth of zines. So we'll see if customs gives me any problem when I try to get through.
That's exciting. And I guess that's already a lot. But if you could even bring more, you could donate them to the libraries in the other countries as you go. So you have your zine and all the zine collections all over.
Yeah, yeah, I'm definitely going to give some to the school and make sure the school library has some. I don't. It's weird because some people were telling me that like India's public library system is not kind of the same as what we have here. You know, they have more like private libraries.
Yeah, I hear a lot of South America too. I was there a few years ago. That also there are a lot of private libraries, not public, like
Mm.
here. So I guess we're lucky in some sense that. And I like how in the beginning you were showing us San Francisco and the comic, and that you were giving out tickets to Boba. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah, the cool thing is the owner of the boba store is actually an artist. And then over the past 3 years, the artists have been working in the alleyway next to him. He started to share more of his art, and he makes like little mechanical games, and he'll bring them out so that kids can play with them in the street fairs and stuff. And then he's also started to paint murals in the alleyway, and it's kind of like the community's taking more ownership over like the alleyway as a public space and as an art space and stuff. It's really cool.
I'll be in San Francisco in August, so I'll try to look for that and maybe find your map and go to the places on your map because it's actually going to be a zine librarians unconference. So we're
Oh,
gonna look at zines. So I'll make sure to find a copy of your comic and show everyone.
Cool, cool. Yeah. What is it? I actually have work in the Chinese Culture Center right now for a different project that's not related to zine, but is related to banners. But that'll be up till August 4th.
Oh yes, August 4th and August 5th is the Zine Librarians Unconference, and it's free, and it's at San Francisco Public Library one day and the University of San Francisco the other day. It's a bunch of zine librarians from all over the nation coming together to talk about zines and libraries, and that's how I met the zine librarians from Wellcome Collection in the UK. So I actually met them when they did the Zine Librarians Unconference in 2017 in Long Beach.
Oh, cool. Awesome. Yeah, they seem really cool. All right.
Did, Do we have questions from our audience? I know we have some comments coming up.
Somebody, Blanca asks, what is one tip you have for someone who is interested in starting a collaborative zine? Ooh, collaboration is so tricky, right? It really depends. I mean, I think like, of course, having like shared vision and shared values are really helpful. Like the vision is kind of like setting where you want to go, but then the value is kind of like going to help you when you have like forks in the road, like which way you want to go. Um, yeah, there's this book that I read about collaboration. I want to say it's by like Twyla Tharp. It's pretty good. She's like a choreographer, and it's like a really easy to read book where it's a lot of her own like advice over decades of working with people. But I would recommend that one. I'll have to look it up to see if I can find it. I actually did a zine about collaboration, so that's why I remember her name so clearly, is because I remember quoting her in it.
And I know Blanquis, as one of our Zine Club regulars, Blanquis has works at a museum in the area, and they do zine events. They had a program called Zine Fiesta.
Nice.
Oh, we have another question.
Was there a special moment while talking with organizations to develop the zines that stuck out to you? Hmm. I mean, I think just like being in places where you normally don't get to be invited to is really special. So like going to the community garden, and then they're like, I was like, where's the restroom? And they're like, oh, we don't have a restroom, but I can take you to the restroom in the colony on Flughaven. And so I got to walk through their little neighborhood, and it's like all these little cottages. Everybody is an amazing gardener, and they all have like flowering fruit, vegetables, and produce patches and all this stuff. And it's car free. Um, and it's like just there's just all this, like you can just tell like this is an intentional community, and they really built something very special here that is hard to sustain. Like you don't hear about intentional communities lasting from like 1946 to like the current day, you know. So that like things like that where, oh, like I'm on a secret tour, you know, that most people don't get to go on. It's really cool.
And I like how you're when you were in Japan, it wasn't Tokyo, but a different city. So what made that decision happen, or who picked that location?
Oh, it was because the organization I partnered with was based there. It was like that clinic that happened to be based in that little town. And it was interesting because there, that town like doesn't have like they don't have like a big library that you can connect with. It's just this like private clinic. Um, and then we would do our workshops in cafes, you know.
Well, I really enjoy hearing about all your travels, and it's inspiring to, as just someone into zines traveling, maybe connecting ahead of time and saying, can I lead a zine workshop in your community to spread the zine knowledge when you're traveling, and seeing if there is a public space or cafe. Maybe you could just do like a pop-up zine workshop at a cafe next time someone travels anywhere. I mean, I went to Cuba and Venezuela and Iran, and I'm looking where are the zines, where are the zines. I couldn't find really zines. I found like art books or cartoneros,
Hmm.
but you really have to be connected to like an underground scene to find the zines in some countries, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
Were you able to find like zines that you weren't making necessarily, like in the communities you're visiting? Oh, I know you didn't have much time in those communities, but
Yeah, I didn't. I really was. I was probably in like India for like 10 days or something, and I did like a bunch of workshops, and yeah, it was. Unfortunately, I didn't have much time to travel. I hope to not be like. It's funny. My work is all about well-being, but then I'm always like, go, go, go. Okay, let's see. There's another question from Alberto. Hello. So, while interacting with so many niche groups, did you ever feel like there wasn't enough time to properly describe all the nuances within each group to include in your work? Oh, yes. Okay, so for the most part, I'm including everybody's work in the zines, although, like, some of the younger students in India, um, they were kind of like, it was interesting, like, to think about, like, um, this so the younger students who were, like, 14 and 15, they would remind me more of, like, 12 or 13-year-olds here in the US, you know what I mean? Where, like, their influences are just more like their family, like, their sense of self and what they want is a little bit, like, still emerging, you know? There's only, like, 2 girls who were, like, really, like, "I know what I want." Like, one girl was like, "I'm gonna be president." And, like, one girl was like, "I'm gonna play badminton," which, like, there's a lot of patriarchal customs and norms, and so for her to be like, "I'm an athlete," is I thought was really cool. But for the most part, it was like kind of like I decided to, because we had 2 workshops. Then the second workshop, I was like, I'm going to structure the second workshop a little differently so they work in groups. Like one group is going to focus on sports, one group's going to focus on art, and they drew like coloring sheets and stuff. Um, so it was kind of like there were lots of times where I had to adapt to and be responsive to what I was learning about the people I was working with. Um, and fortunately, in that situation, it just happened to be that there was two sessions, so I could change the second session. Um, yeah, I think the nuance question is really hard though, because there is so much. Um, I think that gets lost in translation. And I think belonging is already a really diffuse term where even when you are speaking with a native speaker, everybody's definition is going to be a little bit different. So it is tricky.
and I like how you have the paper dolls that you had to the anti-prom at New York Public Library. That sounds like a really fun activity, and that in India they added to it with the traditional garb. What about other cities you visited? Did they see the paper dolls? Could they add from their city?
Oh, I think we were only able to do it in India because that workshop was like extra long. Like it was a day-long workshop, and also those students were extra fast because they were artists and designers already. But that is a cool idea to be able to make it so other people can add garments too. But there just wasn't time in the other cities. But what's cool is like, I did a little research because I remember paper dolls when I was a kid, which were like fashion plates. But even then, that was kind of an antiquated thing. And so I looked up the history, and it's like from the 1800s and stuff. And I'm like, are these teenagers even going to know what a paper doll is? So fortunately, we had like a meeting before the event, and I ran the idea past them, and they're like, "Oh yeah, it'll be cool." And I was like, "Okay, thank you." I'm glad.
Yeah, and I like how you said that it was great to have the print physical zine with you to show them and to step away from technology, because even though we're on YouTube Live right now and it is bringing us together, it's nice when you discover a zine out in the middle of nowhere, not connected to technology, and it's just do you spread your zines around? Like I know how you have them for people to pick up in San Francisco, well, your comics in San Francisco, Chinatown. What about these? Do you plan to like leave them in little corners or some for people to find?
Oh, I don't have plans for that. I am hoping to just like I'm hoping to have enough set aside so that like any libraries who want to have them in circulation, I'll send them a free copy. But you know how like in the pandemic, like the price of everything has gone up, like the price of wood has gone up, the price of paper has gone up. So, and you know, like four of these zines, which are around like 60 to 70 pages each, so it's kind of a lot. So I don't think I can just leave them out, you know, but I'm going to try to make them, you know, I love libraries and I would love people to support libraries and use libraries and share resources. So I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, recently in Zine Fest organizing, we're discussing, oh, what is an affordable zine price point for a zine table? Or usually it used to be $1 to $5, and now we're thinking what you just said. We're like, oh no, probably it has to be $10 minimum is like an affordable price point because yeah, even inflation even hits zine makers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, honestly, like when you go to a magazine stand and a lot of magazines are like $8 for like, you know, that kind of crappy magazine or like a nicer magazine is like 15 or $20 and it's like okay, I think it's okay for zinesters to start charging $10 to $20 per zine, you know.
And in our last few minutes, if anyone wants to come to our next Zine Club, it's on Zoom and it's usually Mondays at 4. And then we can all talk about how to make our zines and support each other and what Zine Fests are coming up. And then sometimes we have special guest zine makers like today, Christine Wong Yap. Thank you so much for helping us with. Yes, LA Public Library. There's the link in the chat. And after this Saturday, when you have your big opening, what's your next project coming up? Is it going to tie in zines or comics, or what do you in your future? What do you see?
Oh, well, so I'm hoping to get the English ones launched this Saturday. I still have to make the German ones and the Japanese version. So I have 8 more zines coming up. And then the final step is to distribute them back to people. Like the set in Bangalore I'm going to take, but the participants in New York, in Japan, and Germany are going to get theirs mailed to them.
And then that brings me to the question how you were very specific that the first one in Chinatown was a comic, and then this one is a zine. So what to you is the differentiation between comic and zine?
Oh, well, the comic was clearly like just illustrated with the text and image combination of like conveying a narrative, whereas these are more like how-to activities, and it's not like a character walking you through, or there's not like dialogue in that way.
Okay, so less of it. You see zines as less of like a graphic novel type, comic type thing, and more of
Mhm,
more like a pamphlet type or
mhm,
publication. Okay, thank you.
yeah,
Yeah, everyone that has a different definition, and it's nice to hear from the zine maker and the comic maker with your definition. And in our last couple minutes, oh, good luck in your English zine this Saturday, and then your future Japanese zine. And wow, 8 zines, so that's a lot of work, but
yeah,
it
yeah,
sounds like it's exciting that they're all going to get to have a copy of it. You're going to give it to all of them, and
yeah.
our library soon as well.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun, and I love that so many people are interested in zines and making zines, and hopefully, yeah, if you have a chance to connect when you're up in San Francisco with me and the show, that would be great.
Oh, I'm excited. Thank you. And thanks to everyone for watching on YouTube Live and participating in the conversation.
Yeah, thanks for all the great questions.
Thank you. Have a great day.
All right, take care.
Bye.